Contingency log number 85. Codename, Gone Too Soon. We've likely all heard the phrase, one bad day. A philosophy that all it can take to break someone's soul is one traumatic event. Something that will completely alter the trajectory of one's life, turning them into someone who they wouldn't have become otherwise. I myself had experienced this, leading me to become who I am now. But I chose to channel my trauma, holding on to the grief and doing everything in my power to prevent anyone else from experiencing it themselves. Unfortunately, not everyone has the force of will to do the same. Sometimes the pain is just too much for a single person to handle. Watching your entire world wither away within your own hands, having nothing left to tether you to your humanity. The despair takes over, and you end up doing any and everything you can just to survive. This was the life Joel lived after losing his daughter. And as if that weren't enough, fate seemed to kick Joel while he was already down, as a virus would quickly spread across his world, causing mutations in anyone unfortunate enough to be infected. It was a world where the strong lived and the weak died, and being a hero was the last thing on anyone's mind. But still, Joel survived, amassing not only skill in traversing in this world retaken by nature, combating not only the infected, but also his fellow man. Joel became what he had to, doing whatever meant he could live to see another day, though his actions could make one wonder if he truly wanted to. But whether or not he desired it, Joel still fought on, becoming a deadly foe to be against. In a world where the infected are drawn by sound, Joel has managed to adapt to fighting from the shadows, using sounds to his advantage in order to avoid conflict with them. But this skill would also easily transfer when fighting other people, allowing him to avoid and combat opponents even when he's at a disadvantage. An impressive feat for a man in his late 40s, as he is even capable of prolonged combat while injured, and capable of healing quickly if he has access to medicinal aid. Due to his years of surviving in the middle of an apocalypse, Joel has gained the physical strength beyond that of a normal man, allowing him to outrun the infected should he need to make a hasty escape, but also allows him to overpower normal humans should running not be an option. But while his strength is well above the average, in a world where getting injured could spell disaster, he is also a man who would rather prevent an upfront confrontation at all, which is why he has equipped himself with a large variety of weaponry, all of which he has become quite proficient in. For moments where he needs more silent takedowns, he has a variety of handheld weaponry of both the blunt and sharp, his usual method being to deal a considerable amount of damage to an opponent, if not outright subdue or kill them. This is usually to allow him to handle other humans without the risk of alerting other people or the infected. But in cases where he doesn't need to fear the infected getting in the way, he can make use of louder means of combat, that being his wide arsenal of munitions, each of which allowing him to handle enemies from a range, in some cases being able to keep himself hidden as he picks them off one at a time. It's sad to say, really, in times where humans are pushed to the brink, when they need to be at their most united, they will more often than not fall to their baser instincts, choosing to care more for their own well-being than that of others. And Joel was no different. It's hard to say how many bodies he's felled in his time, and whether or not he even remembers their faces. He was after all a man who had nothing but a void in his heart, one which seemed would do nothing but grow and consume him. Maybe it would have been the moment when he finally decided to give in to it. But before that could happen, Joel would find himself taking a job which would change his life yet again, one which would require him to smuggle a young girl to a specified location. At first, he kept her at arm's length, just as he'd done with so many others. But as they traveled together, learning to trust their lives in the hands of the other, Joel would soon find himself growing closer to her. And in time, Joel would begin to care for Ellie, as though she was his own. For the first time in years, Joel would feel human again, though while he may have finally regained something lost, This means he'd do anything if it meant never having to lose it again. And when he discovered that Ellie was going to be a sacrifice for an experiment with a low chance of finding a cure for the infection plaguing his world, he had a choice to make. And he didn't hesitate. Joel would go on one last rampage, killing dozens of men to get to Ellie and take her to safety. He would keep this a secret from her, not wanting her to know he may have sacrificed the world for her. And while I have my doubt that this experiment for a cure would have succeeded, I can't say I don't understand. This event changed Joel, the trauma he'd carried with him for years finally being put behind him. A new lease on life giving him new purpose. Rather than killing to survive, he began to rebuild, becoming a hero in the eyes of many people. Finally, he was happy. But sometimes happiness isn't allowed to last. As one day Joel would find his past actions finally catching up to him. If only things could have been different. If it weren't obvious, Joel Miller is no longer with us, which would make the need for a contingency null and void. But given my experience, knowing that alternate timelines are a thing, we'll take that into account. We'll assume a situation where Joel and Ellie never met, or she was unable to help him overcome his trauma, leaving Joel a bitter man who would only find his apathy for mankind growing. Perhaps enough so that he would be detrimental to the survival of the human race, something that would require me to get involved. He is indeed a competent opponent. He would need to be in order to survive as long as he has. But his method of combat would place him in my territory. And while his stealth abilities are impressive, I've spent a considerably longer amount of time honing my own skills in the craft. But that said, I cannot just consider Joel as a solo factor in this, as confrontation with him could also run a risk of me coming into contact with the infected as well. As such, initial strategy would be to get him to a location where no outside factors can intervene. Something that could prove difficult. There are some safe zones he may frequent. Once I'm sure he's alone, I can make my move. If possible, I'd prefer to make my move in the dead of the night, taking him by surprise in his sleep being the most optimal situation. But given the world he lives in, there's a chance he's prepared to fight, even when he's asleep. And as someone who had refused to drop his guard for many years now, it is indeed a possibility. If need be, I could face him directly, as I believe that I am more than capable of defeating him in a physical confrontation. But I also have another means. In a world of monsters, fear is likely rampant, both that of the real threats in the world, and also the fear of what may happen, and what has already occurred, something that can be taken full advantage of through the use of a modified fear toxin. But my use of this is not in a cruel attempt to scare Joel into submission, but to hopefully force Joel to finally confront his biggest fear, and if his will is strong enough, finally come to terms with it, and understand that the loss of his daughter was not his fault. He did all he could, but if he is unable to in the end, then I'll be left with no choice but to take him down. And finally, though not really related to a contingency, there's that fact that I would find myself in a world fighting against an infection that risks the remaining population. It is not something I believe I could turn a blind eye towards. As such, I'm currently in search for a cure as well, one that doesn't require killing innocent people to accomplish. I've yet to discover one currently, but I'm not giving up on it. I believe this world suffered enough, and one way or another, I'll put an end to it. If you also have a character you wish for me to cover, or just want to support this channel, I'll have a link to my Ko-fi page. There will also be a Google Doc with the list of characters who have ever been done or already commissioned by others.